Chapter 1 In the Shadows of the Song. September 11th, 2007. The whispers surrounding Mr. and Mrs. Forminder of number 9 Pine Pass were as follows. They were quite the routine young couple, with their small family of 3, including their child, Sophia Forminder. The Forminders' household was one of mystery and seclusion. Not one person seemed to know where the Forminders originated, although when someone talked about the mysterious family's arrival in Burbling, Norway, the only answers that came out of the mouths of the townsfolk of Burbling seemed to be one of the following bites of gossip. "Oh, the Forminders? I know little about them. They don't seem to get out of the house much." Or perhaps, "That house at the end of Pine Pass was made by the Forminders. I've heard they built it in a fortnight. Some folks say they saw them arrive here 10 years ago to build on what was an empty plot next to that mossy hill at the end of the road. And then, almost out of nowhere, the next morning, the house had already risen, ready to live in. Talk about hauling in a last-minute prefabricated cottage." The fog draped itself over the village of Burbling like an old worn blanket, heavy and damp. It crawled across cobblestones and settled into the crevices of the ivy-covered walls of number 9 Pine Pass. The house seemed to hold its breath, as if it were waiting for something to break the oppressive silence. Inside, dim candlelight flickered against the peeling wallpaper, casting long shadows that danced nervously. In the main bedroom, Angel sat hunched at the edge of the bed, his hands thin and trembling, cradled a small indigo compass resting on his lap. The compass's needle twitched erratically, as if caught in an unseen struggle. Each flicker sent a faint indigo light across Angel's blonde hair, highlighting the exhaustion etched into his pale skin. His eyes were a sunken gray, surrounded by shadows darker than the room itself. He lifted his gaze to the window where Nia stood, her silhouette outlined against the pale fog outside. "They're close," Nia murmured, her voice strained but quiet. She leaned closer to the glass, her breath fogging up the pain. "I can feel them." Angel's hand twitched, his fingers tightening around the compass. "They found us," he said finally, each word heavy, as if it hurt to speak. His voice was a mere shadow of what it had once been, like a once vibrant song that had lost its melody. Nia turned from the window, her expression a mix of fear and fierce determination. "We need to move her," she insisted, her voice more urgent now. Now, the room felt colder, a chill that seeped in not just from the fog outside, but from something deeper, darker. Angel nodded, his jaw set, though his body seemed frail under the weight of the decision. "We've run out of time, Nia," he said, his voice rough. "She's no longer safe here." In the room next door, a young girl who looked around the age of 12, with soft black hair that flowed and tangled freely in its thin texture, like a dark nest stuck to her pale face, complemented with a dash of freckles and gray-green eyes, which were anxiously wide awake, her senses prickling with unease. The air felt dense with unspoken words. She had learned to recognize the tension in her parents' voices, the way it stretched out like a taut rope about to snap. She slipped quietly from her bed and padded barefoot to the door, pressing her ear against the wood. She could hear her parents' urgent whispers, but the words were muffled, fragmented. She caught only bits and pieces. Trackers. No choice. Now, her heart hammered in her chest, a dull, steady thud that seemed impossibly loud in the stillness. She tiptoed back to her bed, feeling both the thrill and the fear of the unknown. It was a feeling she knew well, like the beginning of one of her storybooks. But this was different. This was real. The door creaked open suddenly and Nia stepped into the room, her face a mix of fear and determination. "Sophia," she whispered urgently, "we need to leave. Right now." Sophia's eyes widened, confusion flickering across her face. "Why? Where are we going?" Nia crossed the room in a few quick steps and knelt beside her. "Somewhere safe," she replied, her voice soft but firm. "There isn't time to explain everything, but you have to trust me." Sophia looked over her mother's shoulder, and there was Angel, lingering in the doorway. His face was ashen, his eyes filled with a weariness that seemed older than him. "Listen to your mother, Sophia," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "You and your mother have to be quick." Sophia's throat tightened, panic rising like a lump she couldn't swallow. "But why can't you come with me?" she asked, her voice small. Nia's eyes shimmered with unshed tears, and she cupped Sophia's face gently. "Your father will follow us soon," she promised, though there was a tremble in her voice. "But right now, we need to go first." Before Sophia could say more, a sudden, violent crash echoed from the front of the house. The front door had been smashed open, and the sound of heavy footsteps filled the air. It was the kind of sound that sent a primal fear down Sophia's spine, freezing her in place. "Run," Nia urged, grabbing Sophia's arm and pulling her toward the kitchen. "Don't stop, Sophia. No matter what happens, don't stop." Sophia's legs felt shaky, her feet barely able to keep up as Nia pulled her along. The kitchen was dark, lit only by the faint glow of the street lamp outside. As they reached the back door, Sophia felt a sudden, irresistible urge to turn around. She needed to see what was happening to understand. She glanced back, and what she saw made her blood run cold. The front hall was filled with dark, uniformed men, their faces obscured by black visors. They moved with swift precision, their guns raised, their steps steady. Behind them, 3 taller figures emerged from the shadows. These figures were unique, paler, thinner, and strangely graceful in their movements. Their skin was taut, almost translucent, and their eyes were voids of darkness. Sophia's heart raced. She had seen nothing like them before, but the sight of them triggered a deep instinctual fear, a feeling that something was terribly wrong. She couldn't tear her gaze away, her body frozen by the strangeness of it all. The room filled with a horrible stench of overpowered cinnamon mixed with sulfur. Angel and Nia stood side by side in the living room, facing the invaders. Angel's hand twitched as if he were trying to summon some inner strength, but his body was clearly weakened. The pale figures moved closer, their black eyes fixed on Angel and Nia with an intensity that felt almost hungry. Suddenly, a low, guttural humming filled the room, emanating from the pale figures. It was a sound unlike anything Sophia had ever heard. A dark, twisted melody that seemed to vibrate with malice. The air grew colder, and Sophia felt a strange pressure building in her chest, as if the room itself were closing in around her. The pale figures raised their hands, palms facing Angel and Nia, and chanted in low, dissonant voices. The sound grew louder, more discordant, filling the house with a suffocating sense of dread. Angel's body trembled, his face contorting with pain as the dark song seemed to press down on him. Nia's gaze remained locked on Sophia, her eyes filled with a desperate love. "Run, Sophia," she cried, her voice breaking. "Run and don't look back." Sophia wanted to move, but she was paralyzed by what she saw next. The pale figures placed their hands on Angel and Nia's temples, and a thin white mist seeped from her parents' bodies. The mist swirled upward like smoke, drawn into the pale figures as if they were siphoning the very essence of her parents. Angel's face twisted in agony, his eyes hollow and haunted. Nia's expression was one of resignation, but her love for Sophia remained clear, even in her final moments. Sophia's chest tightened, her lungs burning with the need to scream. "No!" she cried, her voice raw with terror. Suddenly, a strong pair of arms wrapped around her from behind, yanking her backward. An agent lifted her off the ground, his grip unyielding. Sophia kicked and thrashed, her body twisting wildly in a desperate attempt to break free. "Let me go!" she screamed, her voice hoarse with desperation. The agent's expression remained hidden behind his black visor, cold and indifferent. He dragged her through the back door, her feet scraping against the floor. The night air hit her like a slap, cold and biting. She was thrown into the back of a waiting black van, landing hard on the metal floor. The van's doors slammed shut, trapping her in darkness. As she struggled to sit up, she saw a figure in the front seat, a woman with cold, piercing eyes. The woman's gaze was detached, almost bored, as if she'd seen this all before. "Your family has met our criteria for quite some time now. the woman said casually, her voice low and chilling. Your mother must have been quite the voidologist to design this peculiar synthesizer, the woman said, admiring an odd indigo-tinted metallic device that glowed in her hand as she scratched it. Sophia's head spun, her thoughts jumbled and confused. Who are you? She whispered, her voice weak. The woman didn't answer. Instead, she nodded to one of the agents who approached Sophia with a syringe filled with a clear, glistening liquid. Sophia's eyes widened, panic flaring in her chest, but she was too exhausted to resist. The needle pricked her arm, and a cold numbness spread quickly through her veins. Sleep, the woman murmured, her voice almost soothing. We have plans for you at our treatment center. Sophia's vision blurred, her surroundings fading into a dark haze. The last thing she saw was the woman's cold and passive gaze. Her thoughts grew muddled, her body heavy. The darkness claimed her, her mind spiraling into unconsciousness. The city of Augusta, Maine was a place of breathtaking beauty, where great fiery sunsets complemented old charming architecture. It was a town like many others on the East Coast, yet somehow unique. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the sky and the ground below transformed into a kaleidoscope of green, pink, and orange hues. The residential treatment center, Sunset Point, stood at the edge of this picturesque town, its gray-blue building a tranquil presence amidst the vibrant colors. As the last remnants of the sunlight faded, the building's windows grew dark except for one. A single rectangular panel on the upper story glowed with a soft white light. It was a beacon in the darkness, a signal that, within those walls, someone was stirring. Sophia Forminder, a pale girl with a smattering of freckles and ink-black hair, lay on a narrow, metal-framed cot, her eyes fluttering open to greet the sterile, antiseptic-scented air. The world outside receded, and all that remained was the cold, bare room and the faint hum of fluorescent lights above. The world felt distant, muffled by a thick haze. Sophia's eyes fluttered open, her vision blurry and unfocused. The sterile scent of antiseptic filled her nose, sharp and unpleasant. She lay on a narrow, metal-framed cot, a thin blanket pulled over her. The room was chilly, its white walls stark and bare. Her head throbbed as she struggled to sit up, a wave of nausea making her grip the edges of the cot. She blinked hard, trying to clear her foggy mind, but the confusion lingered like a stubborn mist. The last thing she remembered was the van, the woman's cold eyes, the needle's sharp sting. Now everything felt unfamiliar. The door creaked open, and a woman in a stiff gray uniform stepped inside. Her face was pinched, her eyes sharp behind thin-rimmed glasses. "You're awake," she observed, her tone flat. "Good." Sophia's voice was hoarse when she finally spoke. "Where am I?" The woman's lips twitched, almost as if she found the question amusing. "You're at the Residential Treatment Center," she said. "The RTC? This is where you'll be staying from now on." Sophia's heart sank, her chest tightening with panic. "I want to see my parents," she blurted out, her voice rising with desperation. "Where are they?" The woman's gaze remained cold and unyielding. "You've been brought here for your own safety," she said, ignoring Sophia's question. "Your parents agreed that this was the best place for you. You'll understand more in time." Sophia's throat tightened, her mind reeling. "They wouldn't leave me here alone," she insisted, her voice breaking. The woman's expression didn't change. "You need to calm down," she instructed. "This is your home now, and you must follow the rules." Before Sophia could respond, the door swung open again, and a distinct figure entered. Taller, more imposing. He was a man with a stern face, his hair neatly combed back, and his uniform crisp. His name tag read, Mr. Arkwright. "Welcome, Sophia," Mr. Arkwright said, his voice deep and deliberate. "I'm the head counselor here at the RTC. I hope you'll find our program beneficial." Sophia's eyes narrowed, suspicion replacing some of her initial fear. "I don't belong here," she said stubbornly. "I want to go home." Mr. Arkwright's smile was thin, almost patronizing. "We all have to make adjustments, Sophia," he replied calmly. "It's important that you understand why you're here." But Sophia's mind was only filled with questions. Why was she here? Why couldn't she see her parents? And who were these people? The woman stepped closer, her tone taking on a false kindness. "You'll have plenty of time to get settled," she said. For now, you need to get dressed. Breakfast starts soon. Sophia looked down at her clothes, her pajamas from the night before, now rumpled and dirty. Her mind raced, trying to find some anchor of familiarity in this cold, clinical environment, but nothing felt right. Fine, she muttered, her voice filled with reluctant compliance. But I want answers. The woman's expression remained unreadable as she handed Sophia a set of bland gray clothes. All in good time, she said. Now hurry. As soon as the woman left the room, Sophia's shoulders slumped and she sank back onto the cot. Tears stung her eyes, but she blinked them away, refusing to let them fall. She couldn't afford to break down. Not here. Not now. She dressed quickly, her hands shaking slightly as she pulled on the scratchy uniform. Her mind was a whirl of questions and fears, but beneath it all was a stubborn resolve, a determination to understand, to find out where her parents were, and to escape this place. The hallway outside was dimly lit, the walls a dull gray. Sophia stepped out cautiously, her eyes darting from one closed door to the next. Everything felt sterile, lifeless, as if the building itself had been drained of warmth. She heard distant voices, the clatter of trays, the faint hum of fluorescent lights overhead. She followed the sound, her steps tentative. A group of children passed by, their faces blank and withdrawn. Some glanced at her with fleeting curiosity, but no one spoke. It was as if they were all trapped in their own silent worlds. The dining hall was a large, sterile room, with rows of metal tables and benches. A long line of children shuffled through the breakfast line, trays in hand, their expressions dull. Sophia joined the line, feeling the eyes of the staff on her as she moved. She reached the front, where a stern-looking woman in a white apron served a lumpy gray porridge into her bowl. Eat up, the woman muttered, her tone devoid of warmth. Sophia took her tray and found a seat at the edge of a table. As she stared at the unappetizing food, she couldn't help but feel a wave of hopelessness. She poked at the porridge with her spoon, her appetite gone. First day here, huh? The voice came from across the table. Sophia looked up to see a boy about her age, his golden hair messy and his eyes sharp with curiosity. He was lean, his movements quick and restless. I'm Jack, he added, flashing a lopsided grin. Sophia hesitated, then nodded. Sophia, she replied quietly. Welcome to the land of the lost, Jack said with a hint of dark humor. Don't expect answers from the grown-ups. They like to keep things vague. Sophia's eyes narrowed. Do you know why we're here? What this place really is? Jack leaned closer, lowering his voice. It's a treatment center, he said, mimicking the staff's clinical tone. But nobody here seems to know what they're really treating. Just a bunch of kids who got sent here for our own good. Sophia felt a flicker of hope. At least she wasn't alone in her confusion. Have you ever seen your parents? She asked, her voice filled with a desperate need for answers. Jack shook his head slowly. Nope, he said, and I've been here almost a year. The weight of his words settled heavily on Sophia's chest. A year? Could she be trapped here that long? She looked around the room, taking in the dull faces, the lifeless expressions, and the oppressive atmosphere. It felt like the walls themselves were closing in. But beneath the fear and uncertainty, a spark of defiance flickered inside her. She didn't know how, but she was going to find a way out of this place. She had to. Sophia stared at her tray, Jack's words echoing in her mind. A year. The thought felt suffocating, as if the walls of the room were slowly closing in around her, clenching her hands into fists, her fingernails dug into her palms. She wouldn't stay here that long. Couldn't. She had to find a way out, to find her parents. There was no way they'd left her here willingly. She stole a glance around the dining hall, watching the other kids as they moved mechanically like shadows of themselves. Some sat alone, others in small groups, but none of them spoke much. Their expressions were hollow, their eyes dull, as if something had drained the life out of them. The air was thick with a sense of resignation. You're new, so it'll take a bit to settle in, Jack continued, his voice casual but with an undercurrent of something darker. But trust me, they'll break you if you let them. Just keep your head down. Don't ask too many questions. And maybe they'll leave you alone. Sophia didn't reply. The thought of keeping her head down and following the rules felt like surrendering. And she wouldn't surrender. Not when there were so many unanswered questions clawing at her mind. Her spoon clattered against the tray as she dropped it, unable to stomach another bite of the tasteless porridge. "I don't plan on staying here long enough to settle in," she muttered under her breath, more to herself than to Jack. Jack gave her a sidelong glance, his expression thoughtful. "I used to say the same thing," he whispered, "but this place has a way of getting to you after a while. It feels like there's no way out." He paused, his fingers tapping absently on the table. "But if you figure something out, let me know." Sophia's mind raced. There had to be something she could do, some clue, some way to escape. As she looked around the room again, she noticed a door at the far end of the dining hall, partially hidden in the shadow of a tall cabinet. It was labeled "Staff Only." "Do the staff always watch us like this?" she asked, keeping her voice low. "Pretty much," Jack replied, his tone casual. "They don't trust us, obviously, but sometimes they get sloppy, especially when they think you've given up." Sophia's gaze lingered on the staff door. She needed more information, and that door was the only lead she had right now. If she could get behind it, maybe overhear something, maybe see something that wasn't meant for her eyes, then she might get some answers. As if reading her thoughts, Jack leaned forward, lowering his voice. "I wouldn't try it. They're paranoid, and if they catch you poking around, you'll end up in solitary." "Solitary?" Sophia's stomach twisted at the thought. The term itself sent a chill through her. Jack nodded, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's a small room at the end of the hall. No windows, no lights. They stick you in there if you act out. If you ask too many questions, after a few hours in that place, you think the walls are closing in on you. Some kids come out, and they're not the same." Sophia shivered, though she tried to hide it, but even Jack's warning couldn't shake the sense of urgency gnawing at her. "I need to know what's happening." As breakfast wound down, the other children began shuffling out of the dining hall, leaving their trays on a cart by the door. Sophia stood, feeling Jack's eyes on her as if waiting to see what she would do next. She sauntered toward the cart, her eyes darting between the staff, who were busy cleaning up, and the door marked "Staff Only." Her heart pounded in her chest as she passed by the door. Trying to look casual, she glanced over her shoulder. The staff weren't looking. Now was her chance. Without thinking, she slipped behind the cabinet, pressing herself against the wall. As she reached for the door handle, it was cold under her fingers. She twisted it gently. Locked. Her heart sank, but she didn't let go of the handle. Instead, she crouched down, her eyes scanning the area around the door. There was a small vent low to the ground, just wide enough for her to squeeze through. If she could get it open. She glanced around again, making sure no one was watching. The vent screws were old and rusted, barely holding it in place. Just as she reached for it, a voice cut through the air like a blade. "What do you think you're doing?" Sophia's heart jumped into her throat as she scrambled to her feet. A woman stood a few feet away, her arms crossed over her chest, her face a mask of icy disapproval. It was the same woman from earlier, the one with the thin-rimmed glasses and the pinched expression. "I was just... Sophia stammered, her mind racing for an excuse. But the woman's eyes were hard, unyielding. "You'll find that curiosity isn't rewarded here," the woman said coolly. "If I catch you out of place, you'll regret it." Sophia swallowed hard, her throat dry. She nodded mutely, her body stiff as she backed away from the door. The woman's gaze followed her until she returned to the hallway, her heart still pounding in her chest. She made her way to the group of children heading toward the next activity, her mind buzzing with the realization that she had been right. Something was being hidden here. The door, the locked room. There was more to this place than they wanted the children to know. But she couldn't act hastily. Not yet. She would need to be careful, to be smarter, to figure out how to find the answers without drawing too much attention. As they moved down the hall toward what looked like a classroom, Jack appeared beside her, his voice low and tense. "That was close," he muttered. "You've got guts, I'll give you that. But you will not find anything out in broad daylight." Sophia didn't reply, but Jack's words echoed in her mind. Not in broad daylight. There would be another chance. She just had to be ready when it came. A tall man with a stiff walk and a buzz cut led the group of children down a sterile, gray hallway. His name tag read, Officer Reed. His eyes darted back and forth, scrutinizing every child with the gaze of someone accustomed to finding trouble. The kids trudged along silently, each step echoing off the bare walls. Sophia fell in line, but her mind was still reeling from the near miss at the staff door. She stole a glance at Jack, who walked a few steps ahead of her. His shoulders were slouched, but his eyes flickered with something like interest. He seemed to be observing everything, every guard, every exit sign, every surveillance camera tucked into corners. It was clear he was more than just another lost kid here. There was a sharpness to him, a quiet readiness. They were led into a classroom, its walls lined with faded posters displaying motivational slogans. Compliance is freedom, stay in line, stay safe, and order is strength. The tables were arranged in neat rows, each with a single chair. Sophia noticed that none of the windows opened, and heavy bars were visible above the glass. "Everyone take a seat," Officer Reed ordered, his voice gruff. "Today's lesson is about good behavior and consequences." Sophia chose a seat near the back, her eyes scanning the room for everything that might be useful later. A vent, a loose floor tile, anything. Her mind kept replaying the woman's words. Curiosity isn't rewarded here. The coldness of it lingered, a warning that was also a challenge. A stern-looking woman entered the room, carrying a clipboard and wearing an expression that matched the posters on the wall. Her hair was pulled back into a severe bun, and her lips formed a tight line as she addressed the children. "My name is Miss Lockwood, and I am your behavior coordinator," she announced. Her voice was high and clipped, with no trace of warmth. "Here at the RTC, we believe that structure and discipline are the foundations of success. You are all here because you failed to adhere to those foundations elsewhere." Sophia's stomach churned. The word failed echoed in her mind, filling her with a mixture of shame and anger. She hadn't failed. She had been taken. There was a difference. "Today," Miss Lockwood continued, "we will discuss the importance of obedience and the dangers of defiance. Defiance leads to chaos, and chaos leads to suffering for everyone." The lecture was droning, filled with terms like compliance metrics and behavioral realignment. It was a mix of jargon and thinly veiled threats, all delivered with a cold precision. Sophia tried to focus, but her mind kept wandering back to her parents. Were they still alive? Were they in a place like this, or worse? Her thoughts were interrupted when Miss Lockwood's eyes fell on her. "You," she said sharply, pointing a thin finger at Sophia. "What is the primary goal of the RTC?" Sophia's mouth went dry, and for a moment she couldn't speak. The other children watched her with a mix of curiosity and indifference, as if waiting to see how she'd respond. "The primary goal is to teach obedience," Sophia said finally, her voice hesitant but clear. Miss Lockwood's lips curled into a tight smile. "Correct," she said, though there was no warmth in her tone. "Obedience is the path to safety. Remember that." Sophia nodded, but her jaw clenched. "I'll say what they want, but I won't forget." The lesson continued, each word feeling like a nail being driven deeper into the surrounding walls. By the time it was over, Sophia felt mentally drained. As the children filed out of the classroom, she noticed Jack lagging, as if he were waiting for her. "Nice save," he muttered under his breath as she caught up with him. "But be careful. They like to test the new ones." Sophia glanced at him, her eyes hardening with determination. "I know," she said simply, "but I won't let them break me." Jack's gaze lingered on her for a moment, his expression unreadable. "We'll see," he said finally, his voice low. "Just don't get caught again. They're not as forgiving the second time." They were herded back into the hallway where Officer Reed stood waiting. His face was expressionless, but there was a watchfulness in his eyes that made Sophia uneasy. "Next stop," he announced, "is the courtyard. Everyone follow the rules, and you'll have an hour of free time." Sophia's heart lifted slightly. Free time. It wasn't much, but it was a chance to gather information, maybe find someone who could help her understand what was really going on. High fences topped with barbed wire surrounded the courtyard, but it was the first breath of fresh air Sophia had had since she arrived. The sky above was gray and overcast, the sun barely visible through the thick clouds. The ground was mostly dirt, with patches of worn grass. A few benches lined the edges, and some children clustered together, murmuring. Sophia moved toward the far corner, away from the major group. Jack followed, his steps casual but purposeful. "This is the only place they don't monitor as heavily," he hissed. "But they still watch." Sophia glanced around, noting the cameras mounted on the fence posts. "Why?" she asked. "Why do they keep us here? What do they want from us?" Jack shrugged, but there was a bitterness in his voice. "They say it's for our own good, that we're dangerous or defective somehow, but no one really knows. The kids who've been here the longest, they've stopped asking questions. I think that's what this place really does to you. It makes you stop caring." Sophia's resolve hardened. "I'm not going to stop asking," she said, her voice low but fierce. "I'm going to find out the truth." Jack studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Then you'd better be smart about it," he said, "because once they think you're a threat, they won't hold back." The sound of a whistle cut through the air, signaling the end of free time. The children filed back toward the building, their steps reluctant. Sophia felt a surge of frustration. An hour wasn't nearly enough time to figure anything out, but it was a start. As they made their way back inside, Sophia's gaze drifted to the guards by the door, their expressions indifferent, their hands resting on tasers clipped to their belts. She wondered how many of them knew the truth about this place, or if they were just following orders. One thing was obvious: the RTC was designed to crush defiance, to make the children accept their captivity without question. But Sophia knew she couldn't afford to accept it. "I will find a way out," she vowed silently, "no matter what it takes." The group of children was led back into the building, their movements slow. As they walked down another sterile gray hallway, Officer Reed's voice broke the silence. "Next up is group therapy. You will participate daily, follow the rules, and it will go smoothly." Sophia entered a small windowless room lined with mismatched chairs arranged in a circle. It felt cramped, the air stale. A thick, dusty rug covered the floor, and a small table in the center held a box of tissues and a stack of worn, laminated worksheets. She scanned the faces of the other kids. Some seemed resigned, others wary. Among them was Jack, seated near the back, his expression guarded. Beside him was a group that seemed to stick together. A girl with bright curly hair and deep brown skin, a boy with dark curly hair, and a wiry boy with sharp features. Another was an Asian girl with straight black hair tied back in a loose ponytail. Her eyes were watchful, and her posture carried a mix of tension and defiance. Sophia took an empty seat near the group. Feeling a flicker of curiosity, she caught bits of their low conversation. "I still don't buy any of this," the boy with curly hair muttered. The Asian girl's expression was skeptical, her voice calm but resolute. "Neither do I, Mo," she replied, "but we have to play along, or it's solitary again." Sophia felt a sense of recognition. These were kids who hadn't given up. A nasally voice interrupted them. "All right, everyone settle down." A thin man with round glasses and a forced smile entered, carrying a clipboard. His exaggerated politeness seemed entirely at odds with the stark surroundings. "I'm Mr. Swivel, and I'll be leading today's session." The kids settled into an uneasy silence. Mr. Swivel took a seat, crossing his legs with a practiced air. "Today, we're going to talk about trust," he announced, tapping his clipboard. "Trust is the foundation of progress here at the RTC." The Asian girl rolled her eyes slightly, muttering something Sophia couldn't catch. Mr. Swivel noticed but continued without pause. "Let's start with introductions," he said cheerfully. "Everyone share your name and one thing you're grateful for." The girl with bright curls spoke first. "I'm Layla," she said with a note of defiance, "and I'm grateful because I haven't lost my will to live yet." Mr. Swivel's smile flickered, but he nodded. Thank you, Layla. Very honest. The boy beside her, Mo, spoke next. I'm Mo, he said, and I'm grateful for being outside today, even if it was just for an hour. Next was the wiry boy with sharp eyes. He leaned back in his chair, his voice guarded. I'm Makesh, he said, and I'm grateful for not being in solitary right now. The Asian girl followed, her expression steady. I'm Zarda, she said simply, and I'm grateful for remembering who I was before I came here. The last boy, sitting apart from the others, was more subdued. He murmured. Ambrose, he said, I'm grateful for still being able to think for myself. Sophia's turn came. I'm Sophia, she said, and I'm grateful for still remembering that my 13th birthday is tomorrow. Jack stood up suddenly and grabbed Sophia's hand, giving it a firm shake. Hello, I am Jack, and I'm grateful that it's your birthday tomorrow. Mr. Swivel's eyes lingered on her for a moment. He then clapped his hands together. Excellent. Now let's discuss the importance of trust in our progress here. What does trust mean to you? The room fell silent. Layla shifted in her seat, skepticism etched on her face. Mo glanced at the door as if considering an escape. Akesh crossed his arms, exuding defiance. Layla finally spoke. How can we trust a place that keeps us here against our will? Mr. Swivel's smile tightened. This is a place of healing, he insisted. Trust is the first step in your journey toward progress. Sophia's mind churned. This isn't healing, it's control. Trust has to be earned, Akesh said bluntly, his voice low but sharp. And you haven't earned it. Mr. Swivel's expression remained fixed, but there was a flicker of annoyance in his eyes. That's why we're here, he said, to learn how to move past our resistance and accept the process. As the session dragged on, Mr. Swivel's efforts at therapeutic breakthroughs were met with silence or thin sarcasm. When it finally ended, the children were dismissed in pairs, each escorted by a staff member. Sophia walked alongside Zarda, who glanced at her with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. First time in group? Zarda asked. Yeah, Sophia replied. Zarda smirked. Welcome to the game. Just remember, it's all pretend. They're not here to help us. Sophia nodded, absorbing Zarda's words. She knew she'd need allies, but she couldn't afford to trust anyone completely. Not yet. As they were led back to the dorms, Sophia's mind kept turning. She had to understand what this place truly was and how to get out. She would find a way no matter what it took.